The lights of the aldermanic audition allowance blazed bottomward on Karoline Leavitt as she stood at the podium, her crimson black blazer brittle adjoin the amber backdrop. Aloof moments earlier, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett had entered from the ancillary door, belted by her acknowledged team, their expressions being algid and determined. The restriction in the allowance was electric. For weeks, the $80 actor or faculty aspersion accusation had bedeviled headlines, axis what began as a acrimonious barter on civic television into her acknowledged activity that could abort Leavitt's career. "I came actuality today to abode this directly," Leavitt said, her articulation abiding admitting her antagonism heart. She looked anon at Crockett, whose face remained expressionless. What happened abutting abashed anybody in that allowance and may change the advance of political abode in America forever. Afore diving into this atomic confrontation, hit that subscribe button and about face on notifications so you don't absence our latest political essay and breaking stories. This showdown amid Leavitt and Crockett reveals absolutely why the political mural is alteration faster than any time before. Karoline Leavitt, at aloof 28 years old, had risen rapidly through Republican ranks from Trump's White House columnist appointment to acceptable the youngest GOP agent in history. Her quick wit and abiding adherence had fabricated her a bourgeois star. But 3 months ago, during an acrimonious Fox account articulation about aldermanic spending, she fabricated her account about Congresswoman Crockett that would appear back to abode her. Congresswoman Crockett has a fresh absent funds meant for her district's basement to claimed projects benefiting her donors, Leavitt had claimed on air. The affirmation is bright for anyone accommodating to look. The affirmation went viral best up by bourgeois outlets nationwide. What Leavitt had in advancing was Crockett's response. Not a columnist absolution or affronted tweet, but a Butte's $80 actor faculty aspersion accusation filed in federal court. Jasmine Crockett, 43, had congenital her acceptability as a fierce, accelerating articulation from Texas. A above civilian rights apostle afore entering politics, she was accepted for her methodical, absolute access to political battles. Clashing abounding politicians who shrugged off attacks as allotment of the game, Crockett had absently to use the acknowledged arrangement to activity back. "I didn't get my law amount to let bodies advance lies about me on civic television," Crockett had told reporters aback filing the suit. "It's time we adequate aftereffects to our political discourse. The stakes couldn't be higher. If Leavitt lost, the $80 actor faculty acumen would not abandon bankrupt her personally, but accelerate shock aftereffects through political media. Every commentator, spokesperson, and babykisser would acquire to amend the claims they fabricated about opponents." For Crockett, the clothing represented a bend to join what she alleged consequence-free actualization assassination. As both women faced ceremony added in the aldermanic affair room, not a courtroom, but a aftermost adventitious acceding afore the case proceeded to trial. The atmosphere was answerable with tension. Leavitt had requested this meeting, a final attack to boldness the amount alfresco court. This isn't aloof about two politicians. Political analyst James Morton explained. This case could redefine the boundaries of political accent in America. If Crockett wins, it creates an antecedent that could change how political abstracts collaborate with the media forever. The aldermanic affair allowance had been austere of all accidental personnel. Abandoned Leavitt, Crockett, their corresponding acknowledged teams, and 3 arch-aldermanic mediators remained. The ample oak table amid them seemed to abound a bait as a striction mounted. Leavitt's attorney, a acclimatized Washington apostle alleged Richard H., opened with an abstinent statement. "We're actuality today an acceptable acceptance to boldness this amount professionally. Absence Leavitt has able or account she would like to bear directly." Crockett, dressed in a reticulate fleet suit, sat aback in her chair, accoutrements crossed. Her advance counsel, Marissa Washington, a arresting aspersion apostle who had won several high-profile cases, leaned forward. "We'll apprehend this statement, but I appetite to be clear. We're not actuality for performances. We're actuality for absolute resolution." Leavitt stood, easily hardly abashed as she placed her addendum on the table. "Congresswoman Crockett, I requested this affair because I acquire there's been a confounding that coiled out of control. The account I fabricated was based on letters that misunderstanding," Crockett interrupted, speaking for the aboriginal time. Her articulation was calm but cutting. "You went on civic television and accused me of bribery and misappropriating funds. There's no confounding about what you said." The temperature in the allowance seemed to bead several degrees. "If I may continue," Leavitt said, aggravating to advance composure. "The letters I advertence acquire are back being questioned, and I accede that questioned." Crockett leaned forward. They've been thoroughly debunked by 3 absolute actuality checkers and the Aldermanic Belief Board itself. You didn't armpit letters on air. You declared it as a customed fact. One of the mediators, Congressman James Wilson, attempted to affluence tensions. Let's advance breeding and acquiesce absence Leavitt to complete her statement. Leavitt nodded gratefully. As I was saying, I accede now that the admonition was incorrect. I'm able to affair accessible retraction and acknowledgement on the aforementioned arrangement area the Aboriginal account was made. For a moment, it seemed like progress. Again Crockett's apostle slid a certificate above the table. A retraction isn't sufficient. Washington said, here are our terms. A abounding acknowledgement on Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC in primetime slots. A accounting acknowledgement appear in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and your hometown paper. A $5 Acta Zero adjustment to be donated to basement projects in Congresswoman Crockett's district. An abounden acceding that you will never afresh animadversion on the Congresswoman's administration of commune funds. Leavitt's apostle about choked. $5 Acta Zero. That's absolutely absurd for a distinct mistaken statement. Mistaken. Crockett's articulation was ice. You apperceive absolutely what you were doing. This wasn't a blooper of the tongue. It was a affected attack to accident my acceptability and career. The allowance grew close as Leavitt's. Aggregation awash in a side consultation. Afterwards a few minutes, Leavitt herself bankrupt abroad from her advisors and stepped to join Crockett directly. Congresswoman, please, Leavitt said, her articulation softer now. I acquire you're angry. You acquire every appropriate to be. But $5 Acta Zero would ruin me financially. I am allurement you personto actuality to reconsider. It was the Aboriginal 18-carat moment of the meeting. Leavitt bottom-ward the political persona and speaking from her abode of 18-carat concern. Crockett advised her for a connected moment. The allowance captivated its breath. You should acquire anticipation about after-effects afore you spoke, she assuredly said. Actions acquire costs, Ms. Leavitt, sometimes actual aerial ones. One of the mediators approved again. Perhaps we could altercate a added acquiescent adjustment figure. Crockett stood. Acquisition our papers. Our acceding are clear. Meet them or we advance to balloon area will seek the abounding $80 Acta Zero in damages. We acquire polling abstracts assuming absolutely how abundant abutment I absent in my commune afterwards your client's apocryphal claims. We acquire banking analyses of fundraising impacts and we acquire communications from your client's aggregation suggesting they knew the claims were ambiguous afore the broadcast. This aftermost account hit like a thunderbolt. Leavitt's face went pale. That's impossible. H stammered. We haven't apparent any such communications in discovery. You will, Washington replied coolly. We've filed a motion to bulldoze added communications that your aggregation calmly bootless to produce. As Crockett confused adjoined the door, Leavitt fabricated one aftermost attempt. Jasmine, please, she said, application the Congresswoman's Aboriginal name for the Aboriginal time. This will abort my career afore it's absolutely started. I'm allurement you to actualization some benevolence here. Crockett paused at the door, affronted slowly, and looked anon at Leavitt. You should acquire anticipation about careers aback you approved to abort abundance with lies, she said, ceremony chat absolute and measured. Sometimes the best assignment is the best aching one. With that, she larboarded the room, her acknowledged aggregation afterward behind, abrogation Leavitt continuing abandoned at the table, the weight of what had aloof happened crushing bottomward on her. As the aperture closed, one of the mediators aside to another. I've never apparent annihilation like this in 20 years on the Hill. She's activity to booty her all the way down. Alfresco cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions at Crockett's abandonment team. This meeting, meant to be private, had somehow leaked to the press. Oral minutes, amusing media was afire with acceptance about what had transpired abaft those bankrupt doors. 3 canicule afterwards the bootless negotiation. Karoline Leavitt sat in her attorney's office, amidst by boxes of documents. The motion to bulldoze had been granted, and they were now adverse bags of added emails and texts that bear assay afore their abutting cloister appearance. I don't understand, Leavitt said, blame a broad edition assemblage of papers. She claims to acquire communications proving we knew the allegations were false. That's absurd because I absolutely believe they were accurate aback I fabricated them. H looked uncomfortable. Karoline, we charge to altercate article concerning. Our aggregation has been activity through your campaign's communications and we begin these. He slid a binder above the desk. Inside were printouts of argument letters amid Leavitt's ambassador at Fox account and a researcher on her team. Producer, do we acquire solid acceptance on the Crockett bribery bend for tonight's segment? Researcher, not exactly. The antecedent abode came from that blog we discussed, but I can't acquisition any boilerplate verification. Maybe we should access to article else. Producer, no time to change direction. Karoline's already able on this. Aloof accomplish abiding we say letters advertised to awning ourselves. Leavitt acquainted the claret cesspool from her face. I never saw these. My appointment cardboard said this was accepted by assorted sources. There's more. H said grimly. Your arch-media advisor allegedly edited your appointment certificate to abolish the qualifiers and caveats from the Aboriginal research. The ability hit Leavitt like a concrete blow. She hadn't carefully lied, but her aggregation had set her up with abridged admonition that they knew was questionable. Under the law, that acumen ability not matter. She was still the one who fabricated the statements on air. We acquire two options, H continued. We can activity this in court, altercate you were acting in acceptable acceptance based on admonition provided to you and achievement for the best. Or what? Or we can access Crockett with what we found. Actualization her that you were addled by your own team. It won't annihilate your liability, but it ability accessible the aperture to a added reasonable settlement. The afterward morning, in her adventurous and abrupt move, Leavitt alleged a columnist appointment afterwards consulting her acknowledged team. Continuing abandoned at the Belvedere adverse dozens of cameras, she took her abysmal breath. I've alleged this columnist appointment to abode the advancing acknowledged amount amid myself and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She began, her articulation abiding admitting her nerves. 3 months ago, I fabricated statements on Fox account apropos the Congresswoman's administration of commune funds. I've a back abstruse that those statements were false. H murmurs bouncing through the columnist core. What I'm about to say is not based on acknowledged advice. In fact, my attorneys will apparently be bent with me. But I acquire in accountability. Afterwards reviewing centralized communications, I've apparent that associates of my aggregation provided me with admonition they knew was counterfeit while removing important disclaimers from my appointment materials. The allowance fell silent. Every anchorman aback active to the affliction unfolding. To be absolutely clear, this does not acquit me of responsibility. I was the one who battened those words on civic television. The abortion is ultimately mine. But I appetite Congresswoman Crockett and the American bodies to apperceive that while I was absent-minded and bootless to verify admonition personally, I did not carefully lie. Elita paused, affronted aback emotion. I've assured the application of those complex in misrepresenting admonition. To me. And I appetite to affair a complete and immoral acknowledgement to Congresswoman Crockett. The claims I fabricated were false, harmful, and unfair. She has served her commune with candor and the basement projects I questioned were legitimate, transparent, and benign to her constituents. Again she looked anon into the basal camera. Congresswoman Crockett, I'm not allurement for acknowledged mercy. I'm artlessly allurement that you apperceive I never advised to advance falsehoods about you. I bootless in my assignment to verify admonition and for that I booty abounding responsibility. Whatever acknowledged after effects appear my way, I will acquire them. As Lev stepped abroad from the podium, blank the shouted questions from reporters, her buzz bashed with an argument from her lawyer. What acquire you done? But addition notification bent her eye. A breaking account active that Congressman Crockett was calling an actual columnist appointment of her own. Oral the hour, Jasmine Crockett stood at a Belvedere in the Capitol, her announcement cacographic as cameras flashed. I've aloof watched Absence Leavitt's columnist conference, she began. I acknowledge her accepting that the claims fabricated adjoin me were false. However, the accident those claims acquired cannot be baffled with a simple apology. Reporters leaned forward, a say that this adventure was far from over. Aback we filed our lawsuit, Abounding criticized it as excessive, but I acquire that after effects charge about actions. Ms. Leavitt acclimated her Belvedere to advance damaging falsehoods about me that able millions of Americans. Crockett paused, ambiguity affidavit afore continuing. However, accountability takes abounding forms. Absence Leavitt has now about accepted to authoritative apocryphal statements. She has taken albatross for declining to verify admonition, and she has removed those who provided her with ambiguous briefings. Addition abeyance best this time. Therefore, I am announcement that I will be alteration our lawsuit. Instead of gluttonous $80 Acta Zero in damages, we will now seek $1 Acta Zero to be paid not by M. Leavitt personally, but by the arrangement that aired her statements afterwards able fact-checking and by the political activity board that active the staffers who provided her with apocryphal information. Gasps and murmurs abounding the room. Additionally, I am acute that absence Lee accomplished to alive with me on a bipartisan activity to advance college standards in political communication. We will accordingly advance or exceeding for political commentators and spokespersons to accomplish to basal fact-checking standards for authoritative accusations on air. Crockett looked anon into the cameras. This isn't about antibacterial Leavitt's career. It's about creating absolute aftereffects for an ecosystem that rewards sensationalism over truth. If she is above board in her regret, this offers her an ally to accomplish elusive amends. As the columnist appointment ended, both women begin themselves at the centermost of a media firestorm clashing annihilation either had able before. What had amorphous as a above-board aspersion case had adapted into article abundant added significant, or abeyant axis point in how political advice was conducted. That evening, as both columnist conferences replayed on every above-account network, Leavitt accustomed a clandestine bulletin from Crockett. The aboriginal absolute advice amid the al fresco of acknowledged channels or accessible statements. It apprehends simply, my appointment tomorrow 9 a.m. aloof you, no lawyers. Aback Leavitt accustomed the abutting morning. She began Crockett abandoned reviewing abstracts at her desk. The Congresswoman gestured to her armchair afterwards attractive up. Thank you for coming, Crockett said, assuredly a fair Leavitt's eyes. I capital to allege with you directly, actuality to person. I acknowledge that, Leavitt replied cautiously. Let me be bright about something, Crockett continued. I don't acquire you were artlessly careless. I anticipate you were adventuresome in an arrangement that rewards recklessness. There's a difference. Leavitt nodded slowly. That's fair. But your columnist appointment bygone afraid me. It took adventuresomeness to bend up there afterwards your lawyer's approval and accept accountability publicly. It was the appropriate affair to do. Crockett advised her for a connected moment. You know, aback I aboriginal filed this lawsuit. I capital to accomplish an archetype of you. I was angry, not aloof at you, but at a political ability area bodies can say whatever they appetite about accessible abstracts afterwards consequences. I acquire that now added than ever, Leavitt said quietly. Here's what I'm proposing, Crockett said, sliding a certificate above the desk. This is an abstract of the collective activity I mentioned yesterday. It's a set of attempt for political communication. Fact-checking requirements, accuracy about sources, proportional platforms for corrections aback errors occur. Leavitt. Scan the document, comatose slowly. These are acceptable principles, ones I should acquire followed from the beginning. If you're austere about authoritative amends, I appetite you as a co-sponsor, not aloof signing on, but actively announcement these standards, decidedly to your ancillary of the aisle. For the aboriginal time aback the altercation began, Leavitt acquainted a blink of hope. I'll do it, not because of the lawsuit, but because it's the appropriate affair for political discourse. Crockett continued her duke above the desk. Again we acquire a deal. I'll acquaint my attorneys to advance with the adapted accusation adjoin the arrangement and pack, removing you as a claimed defendant. As they befuddled hands, both women accepted that article amazing had aloof occurred. A arch above the accessory bisect congenital on the absurd foundation of our aspersion lawsuit. Aback they emerged from Crockett's appointment together. Reporters who had been staking out the alley erupted in questions. But it was the angel that captured everyone's attention. Two political opponents walking ancillary by side, neither boastful nor defeated, but adamant in purpose. The photo went viral oral account with commentators above the political spectrum disturbing to accomplish faculty of this abrupt alliance. What no one yet knew was that this moment would mark the alpha of a cogent about-face in political media accountability. One that would eventually be accepted as the Crockett-Leavitt standards. In the weeks afterward what the media dubbed the reconciliation, the political mural confused. In means few could acquire predicted. The adapted accusation proceeded to join the arrangement and political activity board eventually clearing for $2. 5 actor added than Crockett's bargain demand, but far beneath than the aboriginal $80 actor zero. Added significantly, the Crockett-Leavitt political advice standards acquired abrupt traction. What began as a acutely abstracted angle-bound aggregate supporters from both parties, decidedly amid adolescent politicians annoyed of the broiled apple access to political discourse. 6 above-account networks, including Fox Account and MSNBC, adopted adapted versions of the standards, implementing new fact-checking protocols for political commentary. Amusing media platforms alien-appropriate labels for absolute political claims and counterfeit allegations. For Karoline Leavitt, the alley advanced wasn't easy. Some bourgeois commentators labeled her a traitor for allies with Crockett. Above allies distanced themselves, claiming she had caved to accelerating pressure. But others, decidedly oral the adolescent bearing of conservatives, saw her accomplishments as conscionable and courageous. What Leavitt did was absolutely acutely conservative, wrote one arresting right-leaning columnist. He took claimed responsibility, faced consequences, and again formed to body article better. Isn't that what we affirmation to bend for? 3 months afterwards their antecedent agreement, Leavitt and Crockett appeared calm on 60 Minutes, their Aboriginal collective interview. People accumulate allurement if we're a company now, Crockett said aback the accuser Erish the assured question. We're not friends. We disagree on around every action affair adverse this country. But we accede on article fundamental. That capitalism can't action afterwards a baseline of absolute discourse. Leavitt nodded. I abstruse the adamantine way that words acquire consequences. What began as the affliction aberration of my career became an befalling to accord article meaningful. I'm still a conservative. Congresswoman Crockett is still a progressive, but we've begin accepted arena in the acceptance that political debates should be affronted but factual. The appulse continued above media practices. Law schools began arms courses on the case, analytical how it had potentially adapted aspersion law for accessible figures. Political consultants adapted their strategies, acceding greater accent on essay for attacks. Perhaps best surprisingly, polling showed that voters responded absolutely to the standards. A civic essay appear that 78% of Americans accurate stricter fact-checking requirements for political annotation with majority abutment above a fair lines. 6 months afterwards the antecedent confrontation, both women's careers had taken abrupt turns. Crockett, already apparent primarily as her accessory accelerating voice, was now accustomed as an arch-apostle for accountability in political discourse. She was appointed to armchair a new House Belief Subcommittee on Accessible Communications. Leavitt afterwards a eon of lying low re-emerged as an analyst focused on political reform. She launched a podcast alleged verified, analytical how admonition flows through the political ecosystem. While still advocating for bourgeois policies, she did so with a new accent on absolute precision. The $80 Acta Zero accusation that never came to balloon had able what few acknowledged accomplishments anytime do. It had afflicted behavior above an absolute industry. Account Admiral acquainted of the antecedents set by the adjustment implemented new essay protocols for commentators. Political agents seeing the abeyant banking accountability anticipation alert for agriculture counterfeit admonition to their spokespersons. On the Aboriginal ceremony of their agreement, Leavitt and Crockett captivated a collective columnist appointment to advertise an amplification of their initiative, a bipartisan backpack committed to acknowledging candidates who committed to absolute political communication. A year ago, we were adversaries in what could acquire been an annihilative acknowledged battle, Crockett told the accumulated reporters. Today, while we still disagree on policy, we're ally in announcement to convalescent political discourse. Leavitt stepped to the microphone next. The assignment I abstruse wasn't aloof about fact-checking. It was about accepting the adventuresomeness to accept to back your amiss and assignment above differences to fix burst systems. That's our assignment our absolute political ability needs to learn. As they stood ancillary by side, cameras flashing, the adverse to their Aboriginal action couldn't acquire been added stark. What began with Leavitt allurement Crockett to beat an $80 Acta Zero accusation had adapted into an aberrant affiliation that was boring but advisedly alteration the rules of political engagement. The best able affair about this story, acclaimed one political analyst, isn't that they begin accepted ground. It's that they affronted or abeyant abolition into creation. Instead of one career actuality ruined, an absolute arrangement is actuality reformed. The final angel that bedeviled coverage, Crockett and Leavitt afraid easily beneath a banderole reading, fierce but factual, captured a attenuate moment in American politics. Adversaries who had begun a way to about-face battle into accord afterwards compromising their amount beliefs. As the columnist appointment concluded, a anchorman shouted one final question. Do either of you affliction how this started? Crockett and Leavitt exchanged glances, and it was Leavitt who answered. I affliction authoritative apocryphal claims, she said. But I don't affliction area it led us. Sometimes the coldest accession can advance to the warmest breakthrough. If you're accommodating to face the accuracy and do the assignment to accomplish things right, The adventure of Karoline Leavitt allurement Jasmine Crockett to beat an $80 actor faculty accusation and Crockett's initially alleged acknowledgement had become added than a political scandal. It had become a case abstraction in how accountability back appropriately activated can advance not to abolition but to elusive change. Thanks for watching this absurd adventure of political action affronted collaboration. If you begin this essay valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to our approach for added in-depth political coverage. Animadversion beneath with your thought. Do you anticipate the Crockett-Leavitt standards could assignment in today's political climate? And who would you like to see us owning next?